and that's just nowhere near enough money to fix £14 billion worth of potholes. Let us know about that and anything else on the show. You can join, of course, by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. Now, this debate's sure to wake you up. Channel 4's latest reality show, Naked Education, has sparked widespread backlash for featuring a group of adults stripping fully naked in front of 14 to 16-year-olds in a classroom.
Yes, the show aims to normalise all body types and break down stereotypes, but some say that it's gone too far. So, do they have a point? Is it important to normalise nudity in the classroom? Well, joining us now for this debate this morning is Dr. Mark Bass, the National President of British Naturism, who worked behind the scenes on this Channel 4 show. He says the programme is about education and does not sexualise children. Meanwhile, Caroline Farrow of the Catholic Universe Weekly says it's inappropriate and most teens would cringe. Welcome both and good morning to you. Mark, I want to start with you, if that's OK. Lots of people watching and listening this morning will say this is inappropriate. Adults, fully grown adults, stripping off in front of teenagers.
Well, I think really the challenge we've got in front of us is it's actually how we do educate our youngsters. So we know that young people are actually getting their education from far more dubious sources. So looking at porn, or even in the best cases, gaining their impression of what a person should look like based on Instagram filtered pictures. So what we really need to be finding is a way that we can actually have that conversation. That's what the show does. I know that there's been a lot of focus on that particular aspect of it. But actually, if you listen to the conversations that are going on, the kids on that show really have had their eyes opened, and they've shown an awful lot of wisdom because they've started to recognise that there are preconceptions that are not entirely accurate and that they really ought to be thinking in a more realistic way about what humanity is.
Well, Mark, I've made a show for Channel 4. I was the front man for Porn on the Brain, and that was about dealing with porn, as you just mentioned. But here's the thing. We didn't show children porn. We didn't show people, naked people to children. Why on earth do you need to tackle nudity by just getting 4 people to get their kit off in front of a classroom? It just feels a bit wrong.
Well, I think the show really just showed that because the kids involved were surprised. This was not their expectation because they are not encountering real people. And the knock-on effect that is having on these children and how it's affecting their development, how it's affecting their mental health, how it's affecting the way that they are then going into relationships becomes a real problem. So it's just a matter of how do we actually educate young people? So if we're not doing it this way, then what is the better way of doing it rather than just sweeping the problem under the carpet?
OK, Caroline, let's take this over to you then. Should we be showing children real bodies? Because if we don't show them it this way, they'll learn about it via porn.
I think it's confecting a problem where no problem exists. In that, yes, I agree, body positivity is a very good thing, but this can be taught in completely different ways to exposing children to adults stripping off naked. This is about breaking down natural boundaries. Us as adults, we don't choose to be confronted by naked people. And it's about saying, oh, here you are, kids, completely normal, get your kit off in front of everybody, and breaking down those natural barriers. And concerningly, when you look at the performers who are involved in this show, they all have, semi-pornographic backgrounds. One is a sex toy reviewer, another, if you look her up on YouTube, sings explicit songs. You've even got in this series somebody who was born female who now identifies as a man, stripping naked. Now, this person has had a double mastectomy and has had a procedure, a phalloplasty, to construct, an artificial penis for them. Now, this again is normalizing gender ideology, gender theory, the idea that it's, that somebody can change their body and normalizing actually what is pretty shocking and graphic surgery. There is no need to do this to teach children body positivity. And also, it's about commoditizing the human body and about commoditizing sexual relationships. When you fall in love with somebody, when you're in a romantic relationship, you love them body and soul. And it's about saying to kids, oh, okay, it's all about the body. It's all about the body. And there are healthier ways of engendering that mindset. And, you know, I'm mum to 5 children. I've got 3 teenagers at the moment. And, you know, I can tell you my eldest, who's you know, gone through all of this, never got exposed to naked people, and has a completely healthy attitude when it comes to, you know, self-image, body positivity. I think schools can do very well in PSHE here, but without actually having to expose children to naked bodies. And, you know, your other speaker is president of the British Naturism Society, which is all about, you know, getting your kit off in public. And, you know, most people do feel very uncomfortable when they're confronted with nudity, because it's very intimate, you know, and you don't actually want to see a naked person doing your shopping or when you're out to walk.
Caroline, if I could bring Dr. Mark back in now, what would you say to this accusation that's coming out there that this is crossing the Rubicon, as it were, from education towards indoctrination? And one of the words that's been put around is this is like child grooming, in a sense. The normalisation of alternative lifestyles, the normalisation of nudity, the normalisation is going too far. This is going from education, it's becoming something else. It's more like activism and indoctrination.
Well, I think the most concerning point raised there is that there's not a problem, because that's clearly not true. So if we look at sort of young women, 1 in 5 young women are self-harming, and that's a number that's tripled over the last few years. Suicide is the leading cause of death in young men. And so there clearly are problems here. And so these are arising from people's poor self-image. So we know the body dysmorphia.
You've got to be very, very careful about this. You've got to be very careful about attributing suicide and self-harming to poor body image. Now, these are very complex mental health issues, and you cannot just simply say, well, okay, there's this epidemic. We have to be very careful. There are media guidelines about how we talk about suicide and how we talk about mental health. And where you have a young person who's self-harming, they are not. We cannot say they are self-harming because of poor body image, because there could be 1,000,001 other complex reasons and comorbidities, mental health problems that they have that's leading them to self-harm. So there is no way that, and there is a difficulty with mental health crisis in this country among young people. I've been subject to that, to the lack of resources myself. But the reason that we have this is not because of poor self-body image. It's things like lockdown. It's keeping children in isolation for 2 years. It isn't, body image may be a part of it for some, but actually, this is part of this ideology to say, oh, okay, people are committing suicide, and if you don't show children naked strangers, then they're going to have a really poor body image.
Dr. Mark,
no.
Come back in on that, Dr. Mark.
Yeah, I would certainly agree that exposure to nudity is not a fix-all for everything. As you say, these mental health issues are complicated. But I think if we're just going back to think about that sort of question about grooming, part of the problem that we've got in the way our young people are developing is that because they're not actually encountering real bodies and recognizing what normal bodies look like, what normal sexual health looks like, they're actually building their sexual preferences and their sexual development based on watching that pornography. Then that means that we're actually neglecting our young people, and we're almost throwing them to the wolves. I don't know if you watched the show, but you saw that all of the young people on that show, or those kids, had watched pornography, and the sort of studies that come out of both the British government and the American government show that by the age of 17, 17% of kids have seen porn. Sorry, 75% of kids have seen pornography. So to try and say that, okay, we're not going to educate them about the real body and therefore we're going to isolate them from nudity is clearly not true. They're going to be encountering nudity. All we can do is actually
Dr. Mark, need to interject. Final word to Caroline. So the point there is kids are seeing too much porn. So the way we solve that is by showing them naked people in classrooms.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. And so the way we stop children from seeing pornography is having tighter controls on pornography. And by the time you have seen pornography, if you've seen pornography as a child, it's incredibly dangerous, and it can alter your brain chemistry. And so you don't just go, okay, well, you've been binging on, it's like saying, okay, well, you've been binging on chocolate. Well, let's binge on crisps instead. This is why.
But Caroline,
we need better
there's no
controls about...
control that could be put on porn that would actually stop children from finding it.
Well, actually, there are many controls that could be put on the internet to make porn much more difficult for children to access. And also parents need to kind of step up to the plate here. As mum to kids myself, I can absolutely tell you hand on heart that my children aren't looking at pornography because I've got a pretty tight handle on what they can and can't access on the internet. But actually, internet providers can do an awful lot more to help block out pornography. And, and children, it's a really defeatist attitude to say, oh, well, they're going to see it anyway, so let's show them, some different naked people for them to ogle over. And I think actually most kids would find this pretty cringe, just seeing somebody else's body isn't going to go, oh, do you know what, mine? And in fact, again, it's encouraging children to think of themselves purely in terms of body image. And in fact, we need to get people to think about themselves, body and soul, that there is so much more to us as human beings than our bodies and what we look like, and trying to sort of make ourselves feel good and presentable to others.
OK, thank you, Caroline Farrow and Dr. Mark Bass. A hugely fiery debate, very civilised though, well done, and that's sure to get you going out there. Please send us in your views on this topic this morning, please. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Now stay with us.